Hi, my name is Nicole Scicluna and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Government and International Studies at Hong Kong Baptist University. As we've discussed extensively in this course, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has affected the European Union in very many ways. It has posed challenges to the EU's capacity as a foreign policy actor, to the willingness and ability of individual European countries and the EU as a whole to provide for the defence of the European continent, to the EU's safeguards against misinformation campaigns, election interference, espionage even within government institutions, and other such attempts by Russia to meddle in European politics. It has also provided opportunities. On the whole, EU member states have demonstrated remarkable resolve and unity since the invasion, which took place in February of 2022. Most member states were quickly and fairly decisively able to move away from Russian gas and to improve their energy security. Measures to help Ukrainian refugees were quickly implemented. And, as we discussed previously, the war has reignited much-needed debates over enlargement and the EU's final borders. Now, in this segment, I want to discuss one of the challenges thrown up by the war, namely the question of whether Russians should be able to travel freely in Europe. Now, this question relates directly to one of those mechanisms of borderless Europe that I discussed earlier in this module, and that is, of course, the Schengen area. So, okay, let's first just briefly refresh our memories. The Schengen Agreement was originally signed in 1985 by a small group of European countries, and it was incorporated into EU law by the Amsterdam Treaty, which came into force in 1999. Schengen is a zone of borderless travel. At present, it has 27 member states. So that's all of the EU member states except for Ireland, Cyprus, Bulgaria and Romania, plus 4 non-EU member states, and those are Liechtenstein, Iceland, Norway and Switzerland. The Schengen area of borderless travel rests on 2 pillars. The first is the harmonisation of external border controls, and the second is the removal of internal border controls. These 2 pillars are interrelated and they're mutually reinforcing. It is only because member states can trust that uniform border control policies are being implemented at all posts along the external border that member states can lift internal border controls without compromising their security. So what does this have to do with Russia's invasion of Ukraine? Well, since February 2022, the EU has imposed increasingly extensive and severe sanctions on Russia in response to its grave violations of international law. However, some Europeans have argued that the measures don't go far enough, whereas there are others who think they go too far. But one debate has concerned whether Russian nationals, so Russian citizens, ordinary Russians, should be barred from travelling to Europe, particularly for tourism. This question is controversial for several reasons, including that it would punish all Russians, arguably violating a key precept of liberal legal orders, and of course the EU considers itself a liberal legal order, that precept being that individuals should be treated as individuals and not collectively punished based on their nationality. At any rate, this debate on Russian tourist travel was brought to the Foreign Affairs Council in August 2022, so it was debated by the 27 Foreign Affairs Ministers. And at that meeting, member states including the Czech Republic, Denmark, Poland, Finland and the Baltic states, so Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, they were some of the states that argued in favour of a ban on Russian tourists in Europe. However, while the national governments did agree to suspend the EU-Russia visa facilitation agreement, so they made it harder for Russians to get visas, to get Schengen visas, there was not enough support to ban Russian tourists from the Schengen area completely, and some of the major member states, including France, Germany, also Spain, opposed those measures. However, this was not the end of the matter. So having failed in their bid for an EU-wide ban on Russian tourists, Poland and the Baltic states implemented one among themselves. On the 8th of September 2022, those 4 countries jointly announced that they would begin refusing entry to Russians holding valid Schengen visas issued by other member states. So at this point, I should note that any member of Schengen can issue a Schengen visa to a given individual, but the decision to grant entry to someone holding a visa is made at the point at which that person crosses the external Schengen border. And this is why the 2 pillars work together and they rely on cooperation among the Schengen member states. Since the EU closed its airspace to Russian flights, and that was done at the beginning of the war, as one of the measures against Russia at the beginning of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So since the EU has closed its airspace to Russian flights, most Russians who are entering Schengen have done so at their country's land borders. And that makes the EU countries that are bordering Russia, or Belarus, which is a country to which Russians can easily travel, that makes those countries uniquely placed to block Russians from entering into Europe. Okay? And it's also key to these countries' justification for acting without EU support, that they are disproportionately affected by the visa granting decisions of other Schengen members. Okay? And as the Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas tweeted, that while Schengen countries issue visas, neighbours to Russia carry the burden. Finland soon followed suit, introducing restrictions aimed at halting Russian tourist travel to and via Finland as of the 30th of September 2022. So, herein lies the challenge. Failure to reach an EU-level agreement satisfactory to all parties led several member states to act unilaterally. Those unilateral measures, which amount to a ban on Russian tourists entering the Schengen area, are very difficult to square with existing EU law, which requires that Schengen visas be granted or rejected based on individual considerations. Okay, so Schengen law actually does not allow for blanket nationality-based bans. For its part, the European Commission, which is the body charged with overseeing the implementation of EU law and taking enforcement action where the law is violated, has refrained from criticising these unilateral measures. This, of course, is a pragmatic compromise, but from the point of view of legal coherence, it is an uneasy one.